For the past 10 days, I have been playing Borderlands 3 while only using Tediore weapons, and of course there are going to be some good ones and some pretty damn bad ones. And as I have already done a top 10 list of the best Tediore weapons in Borderlands 3, I think it's now time for a list of the top 10 worst Tediore weapons in Borderlands 3. And just like the video I made with the best weapons, these will be ranked by how good they go without certain builds. It's just based on how well they work, with no added damage from class mods, artifacts, skill points, action skills, and everything like that, just as a base weapon at level 72. And to be fair to Tediore, there are only a few really bad ones, the rest are kinda just mediocre, but when we make it to the really bad ones, they are really bad. But before starting the list, please do let me know what you would change about this and what you would have as the top 10 worst Tediore weapons in the game, because I really would like to know. But anyway, let's start off at number 10, and that will be the Flammidoodle. And this shotgun basically works like the Octo from Borderlands 2, but if you don't know what that weapon is, I'll tell you how it works. So basically, when you shoot the Flammidoodle, you'll be shooting a ring of bullets with one center bullet, and it basically pulses in and out while it's flying, and it doesn't even do that much damage anyway, but you do get 9 projectiles per shot. And also it does always deal fire splash damage, which is kinda helpful, but not all the time. And half of the time you won't be hitting all of your bullets on the enemy unless if you are very close, because of the weird way the bullets work, but it does ricochet off surfaces, so I guess it could help a little bit, but it does deserve its spot at number 10, because it's really just very average for a Tediore unique. But if you do want it, you can get it from the Wendigo from the Guns, Love and Tentacles DLC with about a 15% drop chance, but I probably would not recommend it. But now it is time for number 9, and that would be the Boo Plus. And this SMG, when thrown, either will explode on enemy contact, or when you hit a surface it becomes a walking turret that shoots at nearby enemies. And when the turret's magazine is empty, it runs at an enemy and explodes, dealing incendiary splash damage, even though the gun always comes in shock. But when you throw the weapon while airborne, the Boo shoots in all directions as well, but apart from that, it's really kinda garbage. The damage is very low compared to any other unique weapon, and as it only comes in shock, it is pretty limited. And the reload explosion does the exact same amount of damage as any other reload explosion from Tediore, and that's kinda it. This gun's just really boring. But if for some reason you do want to get it for yourself, you can get it from the Invasion of Privacy mission, which you can find from Ava in Sanctuary 3, but I really wouldn't recommend it. It's a really boring gun to use. Even for Tediore, it's not fun. And yeah, it does definitely deserve this spot on the list. You could probably put it lower, but I decided to put it at number 9, because in at number 8 we have the Long Musket. And from what I heard about this weapon before doing this entire Tediore only run, I basically just heard that the Long Musket was absolute garbage, so I was not expecting it to be this high on the list. But if you don't know what the Long Musket does, basically it's pretty much a flamethrower as an SMG somehow, that shoots flames with a very limited reach, but not as much as you would think. Especially because if you fire it for a certain amount of time, it also does get a little bit of extra range. But when you reload this weapon, it explodes on enemy contact, or if you throw it at a surface, it sticks to the surface and becomes a walking turret that just basically flamethrowers nearby enemies. And of course, as usual with the Tediore weapons, when the turret's magazine is empty, it runs at an enemy and explodes. It doesn't deal any massive extra damage or anything. Especially because if you throw the Long Musket straight at an enemy, it's going to do a very little damage. What you really want to do with this is throw it at the floor and hope that it becomes a walking turret, so it can burn enemies until they fall over. And just like the Boo Plus, it's an SMG that has a pretty low base damage, and it only comes in one element, of course being incendiary, but it is at least more fun to use than the Boo Plus. But if you do want to get this weapon for yourself, you can get it from Lagromar in Conrad's Hold with about a 10% drop chance. And it definitely deserves this spot on the list. I was hoping it could get into the top 10 best weapons, but sadly it didn't, because I did like using this weapon while playing with it, but sadly it just kinda sucks when it comes to damage. But up next we have the P80 Mark II. With this weapon, when you reload, no matter how many bullets are still left in the mag, it will reload like it is on full magazine size. So doing the maximum amount of damage with your reload that you can possibly get with this weapon. And the thing that makes this weapon worse than the other ones that we've shown so far isn't exactly fair, but personally, if I'm using a Tediore weapon, I'm either going to spam reload it, or I'm never going to reload it whatsoever. But this kind of ruins that, and it's a little bit weird if you compare it to other Tediore weapons. But if you get used to it, I guess it could be much better. But for me, it definitely deserves this spot on the list. Mainly just because it doesn't seem like a proper Tediore weapon. I don't know, maybe I'm tripping. But anyway, if you do want to get this weapon, you can get it from the quest in the Psycho Krieg DLC called A Good Egg. But again, I probably wouldn't want to get this weapon myself, especially since you would have to go through a whole quest to get it. But now it is time for number 6, and that would be the 10 gallon. And this weapon, when thrown, instead of going towards an enemy and exploding, it turns into a drone that follows the player and shoots at enemies constantly until the turret's magazine is empty, and it kind of just floats behind you, not doing anything. And the worst part about this gun is that you will always want the flying drone to actually have ammo in it, so you're going to be concentrating more on the drone than actually shooting the weapon itself. And it kind of gets confusing, but if you do want to use the weapon just for itself, it's actually not that bad. But again, it's just a kind of average SMG from Tediore, and it doesn't get the Tediore reload damage or anything, obviously, seeing as it doesn't explode at all. The only good thing about the drone is that it doesn't get destroyed when you change weapons or when you enter fight for your life. So I guess it could be useful in those situations, but yeah, probably not. And yeah, it deserves this spot on the list, mainly because of how bad its reload is. It would probably be higher if you're just considering the base damage of the weapon, because it's actually not that bad. But still, the ability is so garbage that I couldn't put it anywhere higher than this, just because of how bad the ability is. But if for some reason you do want this gun, you can get it from Genevieve with about a 15% drop chance, and you can find her in the Voracious Canopy, of course. But now it is time for the top 5, and in at number 5 we have the Polybius. And when I first got this shotgun in the game, I was really excited because it seemed like it was going to be a very fun weapon to use, and it had a lot of potential. But then when I got to level 72, it just didn't perform as well as I was hoping it was. And what we have here is basically just a pretty low damage shotgun that shoots in lines of 4, going either horizontal or vertical, which in and of itself would be pretty damn cool, except that it does miss a lot of the bullets. And I mean a lot. Unless if you're versing something massive like Grave Ward, you're probably going to be missing at least half of your shots. So yeah, 5th place is definitely a good spot for this piece of garbage, especially because the reload explosion doesn't do anything special either. I mean, it's a Tediore weapon, come on man, we need some fun with this stuff. That's the only reason to use Tediore weapons. But if you do want this weapon for yourself, you can get it from Genevieve in Voracious Canopy with about a 15% drop chance. So Genevieve basically just has a drop pool of 2 garbage Tediore weapons. But anyway, now it is time for number 4. And we have the Gunnerang. And this pistol, when thrown, flies a set distance and then returns to the thrower like a boomerang. And on the way back, it homes in on enemies and explodes on contact. But there is a massive problem with this, and that is that it only deals 50% of the regular Tediore explosion damage. I don't know why, it doesn't even do that much damage right now anyway, so it's kinda useless. But that's not the biggest problem, because for me at least, half the time when you reload this weapon, it just kinda flies away and never hits anyone. I don't know if I'm just getting unlucky or what's going on there, but yeah, half the time you're probably not even going to be hitting your reloads. And again, this is so low, mainly because it works better as a regular gun instead of a Tediore weapon, with the pretty garbage reload to be fair. So that's all a bit disappointing. But I would say this weapon does deserve its spot at number 4. But if you do want this gun for yourself, you can get it from the Indo Tyrant in Floodmore Basin with about a 10% drop chance. Not really worth it, but if you want to collect it, then sure, why not? But now we are getting into the really bad ones. So in at number 3 we have the Sacrificial Lamb. And I was really expecting this weapon to be much better than it was, mainly because you get it from the We Slash Part 3 mission from the Guns, Love and Tentacles DLC, because to do that mission you had to defeat a pretty tough enemy, and I was hoping that the weapon you got from it was pretty damn good, but sadly, no. Because this weapon, when thrown, becomes a homing Tediore weapon, and it explodes on enemy contact or surface impact, and while homing in on a target, the sacrificial lamb shoots twice at the target, just dealing the regular weapon damage, and then when it hits the enemy and explodes on them, you also heal for 25% of the explosion damage, which I guess is kinda cool, but every single character in the game has some form of healing, and that makes this weapon and a lot of other healing weapons basically useless. Especially this one, because you're not going to be healing that much from this at all. And that's not just because it's only with the explosion damage, it's basically because that explosion damage is so little, seeing as this gun does so little damage, that when you reach level 72, this gun's useless. Just flat out useless. I don't know how good it is in normal Vault Hunter mode, because I got it for the first time at level 72, and I mean, there's not many words I can say for this gun except for a disappointment. But yeah, it definitely does deserve this spot on the list at number 3. I can't see it going any higher, and I definitely can't see it going any lower. Because in at number 2 we have the Baby Maker. And I mean, where do I even start with this piece of garbage? Because holy crap is this thing bad, especially when you compare it to the Borderlands 2 version. And it had such a cool idea, but it just went so terribly. So what you do with this gun is when you reload, you will throw it at an enemy and it will explode on impact with them, and it will deal only 40% of the regular Tediore explosion damage that you would get. But what it does do is it spawns 4 Baby Maker copies that will all explode in an area around it, but for some reason in this game, each one of those 4 Baby Maker copies will each take out an entire magazine's worth of ammo. So with each reload, depending on the magazine size of the Baby Maker, let's just say the average is 20, you will be losing 100 ammo per reload. But if this thing did do a little bit of damage, it might be somewhat useful, but it does such a little amount of damage that it is completely useless. So it obviously does deserve its spot at number 2. But if you want this walking pile of shit, you can get it from the Broodmother in the Pyre of Stars, with about a 10% drop chance. But not only is it a pretty rare drop on its own for any weapon in Borderlands 3, but the Broodmother doesn't even spawn every single time, and it is counted as a rare spawn. But somehow this is not the worst Tediore weapon, because in at number 1 we have the Creeping Death Shotgun. And I'm pretty sure it's called the Creeping Death because the longer you use this weapon, the more you want to die. So basically what this weapon does is that it shoots balls that stick to surfaces and bounce off enemies without dealing damage. Nice. And the balls stick to a surface for 10 seconds before they explode, dealing corrosive splash damage. But the best part, or I guess the worst, I'm not entirely sure, is that when you reload the Creeping Death, if you hit an enemy, the balls that have been stuck to surfaces will all home in on the spot where the weapon reload exploded. And so far it hasn't sounded like the worst thing in the world, but then we get into the stats of the weapon. Let's start off with the terrible damage. I mean, each of the sticky balls that are shot out of this weapon only deal about as much as a regular SMG shot. It's just such a small amount of damage that it's basically pointless. But that's not it, because the weapon takes up 3 ammo per shot, and my tiny brain just cannot comprehend the reasoning behind this choice. I understand it is a shotgun, but that's about it. I honestly can't think of anything else. This thing shouldn't need to take 3 ammo per shot to do the same amount of damage as a regular SMG bullet would do. And then you've also got the very low magazine size, the incredibly low fire rate. It even has weirdly slow reload speed for a Tediore weapon. This weapon's just a massive train wreck. It's a pile of shit. But yeah, this is by far the worst Tediore weapon in the game. It is actually the worst weapon I think I've seen in the game so far whatsoever. Not just Tediore, not just shotguns. I think it might be the worst. And I haven't even mentioned the fact that it only comes in corrosive, being the worst element in the game by far. But if you are masochistic and you want to hurt yourself by using this weapon, you can get it from the Mother of Grogons in the Anvil, with about a 15% drop chance, so I guess have fun with that. But that has been the top 10 worst Tediore weapons in Borderlands 3. And please do let me know in the comments below what you would change about this list, because I really am interested. But anyway, thank you for watching.